But I had a VAR back in the day, and just to give you context, this is when the platform du jour was Token Ring. Does anyone remember Token Ring? All right, over 50, this whole group's over 50. It was on NetWare 2.2. Anyone remember NetWare 2.0? Over 60, over 60. Okay, ArcNet, anyone 70? So it was funny, I was talking to some folks outside. They're like, oh, the most devastating attack nowadays is DDoS, these denial of services. It really destroys systems. You don't know what a denial of service is unless you've worked on a Token Ring network. I had a client, 50 nodes, and if you don't know what Token Ring is, get the hell out. It's a coaxial cable, all connected in a ring, and if you tripped on it, the entire network would crash. That is the ultimate denial of service. After I had that business, I moved into computer forensics, computer crime investigation. And I remember sitting in my office this one particular day, and I was running the numbers. I was like, oh my gosh, if we simply do X, Y, and Z, we can achieve $10 million in revenue. This is my third year in business. I'd never, up to that point, grown a business that size. Like, $10 million in revenue. That's it. And we can take down our biggest competitor. There was a company named Krull. They may still be around today. And I was like, if we simply do this. So I called my team together, just like any great leader would do. So I decide I'm going to do the big reveal. And you know how this works. It's where you take the number you're going to achieve, you set the corporate vision. Let me just take this off. And you write it in big bubble letters. So in front, before the team came in, I wrote in big bubble letters, $10 million in revenue. But to hold back the reveal, I put my sticky note over it, kind of like that. And I called everyone in together. Now, to get a group excited, when you have a corporate vision that you're going to set, you got to have big flair. So I queued up the most important song, probably the best song of all time, the best rock song of all time. You know what it is. It's Eye of the Tiger. Right. So I cue it up, and I have Patty, my assistant. I tell her, when I start doing this speech, hit the play button, and we're going to do the big reveal. My 30 colleagues walk in. I straighten out my jacket. I say, I've been in my office for the last 8 hours, running the numbers, calculating what we can do. And my gosh, do we have a grand job in front of us. If we do the right moves, we can transform the industry of computer forensics forever. And that's when I did the signal. Similar to the markers, she wasn't ready. So I'm like, the signal, do it. And that's when she hits play, and you hear the dink, dicka, dink, dicka, dink, dicka, dink, dicka, dicka, dink, dink, dink. And I'm like getting really amped. I'm like, we, for the first time ever, are going to achieve $10 million in revenue. And that was the response. That was the response. Thank you. I guess you were there. Because it was total silence. And I'm like, what? I just revealed the biggest goal we've ever had for our team. This is our corporate goal. And I said, oh my gosh, in my head, I forgot to do what every master leader does, and it's the grand guru prayer hands and head nod. That's how you get people excited. So I said one more time, I said, maybe I wasn't clear about this. For the first time ever, our company's going to take down our biggest competitor, and we're going to achieve $10 million in revenue. Thanks. I wish you were there because people did not do that. They're like, oh my gosh. It was silence again, and people shuffled out of the room. Patty came over to me and said, Mike, if we achieve $10 million in revenue, you get the bigger house. You get the new car. That's your vision. What about our vision? This became a learning lesson for me and ultimately a mission on what great leaders do. And I'll give you the first little tip. Most leaders set corporate visions. Great leaders set collective visions. Great leaders understand what their team wants to achieve, not for their job, but for their lives. And how do we achieve all of the goals? How do we lock arms and march together? I endeavored from that day forward to one day become a great leader. I'm not there yet. I'm more competent today than I was before. and maybe I have flashes or moments, but I do want to share with you what I learned. I started studying about this, particularly around COVID. What was interesting in the COVID pandemic was what was formerly a desire has become now a demand. I wanted to work from home pre-COVID. Now I expect to work from home. Before, as I wanted flex time. Now you better give me flex time. So I started studying this. It was interesting. During this period, there was a situation that happened at a museum, actually two museums, one in Baltimore, another one in Russia. Yekaterinburg is the name of the city. And in Russia, they have a museum after a former president named Boris Yeltsin. Just like here in the United States, they set up these buildings and monuments, and they'll have art displayed or other things. Well, at the Boris Yeltsin Museum, they have an art piece that they call Three Figures. And it's similar to the Mona Lisa in its importance, at least in Russian culture. And I'm going to do a very amateurish version of it, but it kind of looks like this. It's three figures, they're faceless, and it's worth millions and millions of dollars. They hired a security guard, Alexander Vasiliev, and his job was to strictly stand in front of this piece of art and stand guard. In fact, he was told explicitly, do not look at the art, do not engage with it. Your job is to protect it. If anyone approaches it, defend it from graffiti, defend it from damage. That's your job, and stand there for 8 hours straight. At the same time, there was another museum in Baltimore called the Baltimore Museum of Arts. And they did something interesting that I find great leaders do. Most leaders tell their team what to do. Great leaders ask their team what they could do. In the Baltimore Museum, they had another piece of art. It was called Medusa, because, shockingly, it was Medusa. And it was a knocker from the 1500s, an old door knocker with Medusa's head. And the guard protecting it, his name was Michael York, and he watched the entire exhibit, this room where this Medusa head was. And the curator for the museum came up to him and said, hey, I'm curious, could you tell me about the work you do here, what your observations are? What could you do? And Michael responded and said, well, I don't know if you know this, but for most of the time, I'm acting as a glorified bathroom attendant. Most people come to me and want to know where the men's or women's bathroom is. He goes, but also as a guard, I sit here and I observe what people are saying about this piece, Medusa. Some people say that she was a villain. Others say she was a victim. And he goes, I have this perspective that perhaps no one else has. I know more about this art than even the curators of this museum. So the curator, who was talking to Michael York, said, well, what could you do with this? He says, I can tell you what art should go where in this museum. And that became the inspiration for an idea they called guarding the art. They took 17 guards at the Baltimore Museum of Art in 2021 and invited them to become curators. It went on to become the most successful exhibit of all time at the Baltimore Museum of Art. It had more traffic, meaning more visitors, had more donations, and no surprise, had more engagement with those guards. Now, let's go back to Russia here. One day, meaning after 24 hours of Alexander Vasiliev protecting the art of the three figures, the next morning they found that it actually had some graffiti drawn on it. Someone had improved the art by drawing some eyes on it under Alexander's watch. Well, it was Alexander who did it. He was a little bored, he said. He defaced the art and effectively destroyed it, costing the museum millions of dollars of value. And this won't be a shocker to you. Alexander Vasiliev, ironically, coincidentally, fell out of a 13-story window the next day. Yeah. Okay, that's a joke, by the way. It's a very dark joke. It didn't happen. He was poisoned to death. All right. What we're going to discover today is that good leaders, or most leaders, I should say, tell their teams what to do. Great leaders ask their teams what they could do.